Senator Hawley, you are recognized to deliver your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Tanden, thank you for being here. Congratulations on your nomination. Let me start with a question about corporate special interests, if I could. Mm-hmm. This question relates to your broad view, I think, of the economy and society. Let me just ask you, do you think that Wall Street and big tech companies have too much influence in our economy and society today?
Yes.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I agree with you. And I've talked for years now about these concentrations of power, how they stifle competition, hurt small business, and ultimately hurt working people. I want to ask you about a report from the New York Times and other outlets suggesting that you solicited tens of millions of dollars in donations from Wall Street and Silicon Valley companies as president of the Center for American Progress, including very large contributions from Mark Zuckerberg. I understand that in early 2019, Senator Sanders actually wrote to your organization suggesting that these corporate interests may be inappropriately influencing your work. Can you just give us a sense of how you will, if you're confirmed as OMB director, how you will advocate for working people, given this history of soliciting tens of millions of dollars from the biggest and most powerful corporations on the planet?
Senator, the role of OMB is to serve the public, and I am 100% committed to that role. And let me say that, just to be clear, I believe that the Center for American Progress took funding from the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, not Mark Zuckerberg directly, but I completely take the point about concerns about funding. And I can commit to you that I will always uphold the highest ethical standards. I will work with career folks at OMB to make sure I do so, but I will also say that no policy or position I have taken has been determined by the financial interests of any single person.
$665,000, I think, from the personal foundation of Mr. Zuckerberg. Mm-hmm. Millions of dollars from Wall Street financiers, big banks, foreign governments, Silicon Valley, $1 million from the managing partner at Bain Capital, $2.5 million from the UAE. That was between 2016 and 2018. Given this record, how can you assure us that you'll work to see that these Silicon Valley and Wall Street firms don't exercise undue influence, frankly, influence that they've already got in the making of government policy and the control of our economy? I mean, how can you assure us that you're going to be an independent actor when you've been so close to them to have raised so much money over all these years?
I really appreciate that question, and I would say I and the Center for American Progress aggressively take on the role of Facebook and tech companies. Have called for higher taxes on companies, regulations of Wall Street, financial transaction tax. I'm proud of the record of the Center for American Progress and policies that will limit the power of Wall Street, limit the power of tech companies. I would welcome the opportunity to talk with you and work with you on those ideas, because I do agree with you that corporate special interests have too much power in our discourse. And so whether it's a financial transaction tax or other proposals, obviously I take on my role as OMB director would be one in which I follow the tax policy of the president. But it is my orientation that we need to rebalance power in our economy, and I hope there are ways you and I could work together in those arenas.
Good. I'll hold you to that. Thank you. Let me switch topics. China and government acquisitions. Should you be confirmed, you'll have a leading voice in the federal acquisitions process. In that capacity, will you investigate and work to ensure that Chinese-based products are removed from sensitive government networks, considering the security threat that these can pose due to the spying activity of the Chinese Communist Party?
I absolutely believe that we have to ensure real security in our supply lines from products from China and elsewhere. But China, there are products like Hawley that there have been real concerns about security. And so I would welcome working with you and other senators on ensuring the security of our supply chains.
Let's take TikTok as an example. TikTok, an app that I think represents a national security threat. I think it's safe to say that has been the view of this committee. It is TikTok owned by a Chinese parent company, of course, that is subject to Chinese law, under which they have to share their intelligence sharing law. They have to share information potentially gleaned from Americans with the Beijing government. Do you share the view that TikTok represents a potential security risk, particularly if it's downloaded and used on government devices?
I think we should absolutely be concerned about any entity that takes information and shares it, private technological information, and shares it with the government. To the extent TikTok is doing that, I would share that concern. But I think we should be concerned about any technology company anywhere in the world that is taking your private information of what you're looking at, what you're reading, and share it with any government.
Is that something you'd be willing to look into, that you would commit to looking into if confirmed? TikTok in particular, but also, as you just said, any app based in or controlled by a state that we know is hostile to the United States, represents a national security risk that may collect Americans' data. Is that something you would look into and use your position in the federal acquisition process to scrutinize?
I will definitely commit to looking at our role in the acquisition process to scrutinize. I'm happy to work with your office on those issues. To the extent we have policy-making role across the board, I'd also welcome working with your office on those issues.
Very good. That you anticipated my next question, so I'll hold you to that as well in terms of finding ways to use federal procurement policy to make sure that security risk products do not infiltrate it. Let me ask you, just in my few remaining seconds here, you said in your testimony that our budgets should reflect, your written testimony that is, our budget should reflect the values of a nation built on human dignity. Let me ask you about the views of human dignity held by tens of millions of Americans who consider themselves pro-life, describe themselves as pro-life. For years now, the Hyde Amendment has reflected a bipartisan commitment not to spend federal tax dollars on government-funded abortions, recognizing that Americans have different views on this issue, but one thing that overwhelmingly Americans have agreed on is we shouldn't use federal tax dollars to support or to fund abortions. If you are confirmed in this role, will you advocate that the president's budget request to Congress next year preserve the Hyde Amendment?
President Biden has supported repeal of the Hyde Amendment, and so, I will anticipate how that operates in the budget process, but that is a